I thought I'd just bring this home. I've got a handful of slides here, so this isn't going to be a war and peace, but I wanted to hone in on, I guess it touches a lot of the themes that we're seeing coming through here, but I want to talk about billing, right? And, a lot of folks, I think a couple of years back were sort of talking about the fact that, in communications, billing was dead, billing is dead, you've probably all heard that many times. Well, it's kind of, not dead, and it's kind of actually a profound sort of change, that it's becoming more and more important to actually enable a lot of this innovation that we talk about, because if your billing systems at the back end cannot support the rate of innovation around digital services and time to market and some of these new opportunities around content data, bundling, all of these kind of things that we hear about and the promise of LTE, then you are not going to get a fast time to market, the necessary agility, you're not going to get the right level of growth. But it's really, really hard, right? Billing is hard, it's often 30% of the cost of your IT infrastructure, and also from that perspective, it's kind of often last on the list to kind of sort out the billing, because it's actually really complicated. There's a lot of risk. Okay, so at MDS, we're based in the UK. Again, a few folks here probably wouldn't have heard of us, but we've been in the marketplace for a long, long time. We provide managed convergent billing solutions. Okay, so we've always been in managed services. That's what we do for the last 20 years. We started actually off as one of the first MVNOs, and we're pretty straightforward at the end of the day. And our kind of martini thing is that we talk about being able to actually bill, and enable and innovate any service to anyone, anywhere. And that really comes down to how we've built our platform, how we deploy solutions, and I'll come into that a little bit more, because that's something which is really, really difficult to achieve, to actually take the vision and the requirements of marketing and business, the market segmentation, turn those into services and do it at an ever increasing rapid speed is a really, really hard thing to achieve. And we're really passionate about it because, as I think a few folks have sort of mentioned in the presentations, billing is tied to customer experience. If you get it wrong, you create a bad customer experience, you're not going to drive the necessary level of customer satisfaction. They're not going to want to buy more, they're going to want to go and do it somewhere else, and there's plenty of providers, both in and outside of communications queuing up to do that. We work with a lot of the big guys in the marketplace. BT Mobile, for example, on the B2B side, that's a fully managed service that we provide in terms of the full turnkey billing and customer management. We have 5 million of Telefonica O2 UK subscribers in their business community, all again fully run across our BSS stack. Again, providers like Aircom in Ireland, again we provide them a fully managed service that will enable them to launch into the government and the B2B space, and a few others as well, including the likes of the Post Office in terms of phone and broadband, who we work with in collaboration with Fujitsu. So we've been doing this a long time. We do it at scale, and also, we're a company that believes passionately about managed service, but also the managed service is only as good as the technology that actually sits behind it, and that's really where the innovation play comes from that we sort of talk about here. So, one of the real interesting things, we sort of talk about the convergence of everything, but we all heard, okay, voice revenues declining. I think one of the most interesting figures that I saw was the fact that for every 48 US cents spent on the new LTE-enabled data service, there's still 64 cents which is lost in that same transaction on voice. So the message there is that data services are good, and it's allowing that gap to close, and it's closing a lot faster in the US than it is in Europe at the moment, but there's still a long, long way to go. Also at the same time as well, being able to target and support different market segments is becoming really, really key. There's a whole opportunity in consumer, but one of the things that we see as well is that there's an overall kind of risk around how certain markets like B2B, especially small to medium enterprises, are supported. A small to medium enterprise can also be a consumer organisation if it's a family business. So how do you combine consumer services with business services and also provide a one-stop shop? As well, which really start to integrate both communications and IT. And one of the interesting things that we see in a lot of the providers that we talk to and work with is you see a lot of the IT providers are struggling to get around things like billing with the emergence of software as a service and moving to much more of that kind of annuity kind of business model. Again, a lot of those systems aren't geared up to be able to support that. So that's kind of a really interesting sort of development in the marketplace. And so, you know, what we've done in the communications industry, and in some cases still struggle with it, you see the same sort of transitioning happening in IT, that same sort of transition and challenge happening in utilities. So the marketplace around billing is getting more interesting by the day. It's becoming more strategic, and it's not just in communications; it's in a number of whole, you know, different sectors as we see it. So, if you look at the technology side, I sort of mentioned about the whole area around billing. But one of the key things, you know, I was talking to an analyst from Gartner the other week, and he was saying to me, look, you know, it's kind of really interesting that a lot of the billing platforms in the marketplace that are both deployed and still being deployed are built around a sort of a voice-centric world. And that kind of means one thing, that it's really difficult to support new digital products and services without really investing in very deep and costly development of the platform itself. And ultimately that creates latency about how you get these products and services to marketplace. So that's kind of like a really interesting point that I kind of saw there. We're kind of up to the, you know, we talked about, you know, sort of 3.0, X, you know, this, that and the other today, but, you know, really we're kind of here today. We're seeing the emergence of, you know, convergent services, more creativity around the packaging of digital and data, those kind of things. And, you know, we've also seen the emergence of real-time charging as well. You know, real-time charging is a given. As soon as we got into the world of the iPhone, as soon as we got into the world of applications and over the top, where you've got, you know, the ability to actually trigger a transaction, you know, on your phone and take that straight from the switch to the bill and do it quickly without causing latency on the network. Network throttling is a term we keep on hearing because of the sheer volume of kind of transactions and communications going across sort of networks these days. So that's kind of difficult. But one of the biggest issues around, you know, the kind of the big fat kind of billing life cycle, which is, you know, really difficult to manage because it's about as much about the sort of technology and the ability to bill as it is business processes, so that things like real-time charging come into play are really difficult to integrate into that billing life cycle. And that's why we've seen sort of a lot of what I would call sort of point real-time charging players coming in. But the answer really moving forward, and also, you know, one of the things we advocate very, very strongly, is that your real-time environment around sort of, you know, charging and policy has to be integrated with your billing environment, so it enables that consistent and that continuous customer experience. Okay, so from that perspective, you know, what the future of, you know, sort of billing is all about is having that fully integrated, and that's where sort of managed services comes into play. Because as a managed service provider, if you've got that wrapped very, very neatly from a technology perspective, wrapped with the business processes, fully integrated from a people perspective and a systems, infrastructure and management perspective, you can bring, you know, these types of new service, whether it's to support M2M, whether it's to support a particular type of content service, it might be to support a new, you know, marketplace offering or an app store offering, for example, something that is really difficult and costly to do, you know, within an existing legacy infrastructure, which you don't necessarily want to transform and spend, you know, millions and millions on, because we've kind of been there before, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right? So from that perspective, you know, it lends itself to managed service. So you can take an incremental approach as a CIO in terms of your service roadmap and how you want to support it, and start to build in adjunct elements of, okay, well, we do that with a managed service, I can do that with a managed service, and gradually move, you know, effectively what will be or would be transformation, but not having to do it with that big sort of flash cut, because we're all kind of bored with that kind of scenario. And some, you know, like I said, it's just not cost effective, and I think that the appetite's kind of been lost for that. So that's where the technology play really comes in. So one of the other things as well, and, you know, when we started off in the marketplace, we never set out to build a billing system. It was always about building an architecture and a system that was about managing services and subscribers and groups and market segments, and being able to apply billing rules around that kind of environment. And that's really important. So from that perspective, you know, it's all about the business rules that you want to apply to your segmentation, and that's where a disconnect often happens between what the business and the marketing folks want to do and what you can actually realistically deliver, and when, as an IT group or department. Okay, so again, for us, things like unit of measure, CDRs, whatever, again, being agnostic from a unit of measure perspective is really important for any kind of future service. Also, being able to support a complex hierarchy is really important as well. So you can be able to categorise into complex enterprise segments, so you can actually start to categorise into maybe that kind of family business hybrid for an SME. But again, it requires being able to apply a whole bunch of attributes and able to offer the service, charge it, bill it, and then be able to drive it into that converged view environment where you have a truly converged bill, where your CSRs in the call centre are looking at a truly converged interface, where you can go into the self-service environment and again, really enjoy that converged experience. And this stuff is still really difficult to do, and I think there are very few service providers that have really cracked this across all of their services. I think there's pockets of this kind of coming together, but again, that applies down to the technology platform that you're driving, that's the heart of your managed service. Okay, the actual service offering could be great, but if you haven't got the technology to support it, then and actually future-proof it, then that's got to be part of the rationale for actually moving to this new environment. That's the heart of what innovation is really about. So, in terms of like managed service operations, we've been doing this for a long time, so we know, so we know this. In some cases, in some instances, it's not always straightforward, and you do need the experience of doing it. But one of the things that we feel are really important for managing and driving the relationship with our customers, certainly as partners, is that, I think it's already been mentioned, service level agreements for us are something we embrace as a core of the proposition. One of the things that we've done is we have a very sophisticated analytics platform that we've built that surrounds our managed service. And for me and for us, analytics is a really key way of actually managing those service levels in a very transparent way. To the extent that we're very happy to sign up to these as absolute guarantees, and that includes things like guarantees around how long it takes to configure a new product and launch that into the marketplace. That's not easy, but again, that's something we can achieve through the architecture of our system in literally a number of days versus several months and a lot of hard coding and development costs that you still have to go through. So everything that we do that surrounds our managed service is all about configuration, something that can happen cost effectively and something that can happen in the immediacy. And again, the service play, I think, which goes into the previous presentation, again, the service strategy and design, the transition, all of these kind of things, the culture of the people that you've got running your service desk and your service operation, right through to how you continuously improve that service, is all about having people that understand that what they're doing drives the customer experience of the customer and the partner that they're actually working with. So for us, it's it's a very, very key model, and if you get it right, it can be very, very seamless in terms of the way, certainly from a vendor perspective, in terms of that you're actually working with your customers. The analytics piece, I've already mentioned, it really sort of works on two different levels. So, service assurance is actually key, and again, analytics driving areas around sort of billing accuracy, order accuracy, assuring and being aware that the service is operating as intended all of the time is an absolutely key thing. And that's where the real strength of analytics comes in for us, right across what we're doing with infrastructure, applications, and processes, and then having very clear visualization layer, which allows people, both us as a managed service provider, but also the customer as well, to have a very transparent view of their service. And the other piece, again, is about the sheer amount of data that you've got flowing through a BSS infrastructure. The data is gold dust, and the business analytics piece about how you start to sort of drive into areas like predictive analytics, what services are kind of working and getting adopted, what aren't, what geographical locations based on a certain level of demographics or segmentation are being adopted, is all held within the data of your BSS, and you just got to be able to get into it and extract it. So the business analytics wrap is something that we've worked very, very hard on over a number of years, and that's how, again, the analytics piece comes in as an integrated part of the managed service. It helps assure the service, but it also helps as well, sort of drive sort of business decisions about how to develop that service in the future. And again, that's where you start to really build out and generate some of that innovation that comes from that play. So from that perspective, there's really just a few sort of key points that I'd sort of leave you with from this sort of brief presentation. So the theme today, right? Key theme today: managed service in BSS, certainly across bidding and customer management, can be used to innovate this kind of new digital economy that we're talking about. But it's got to be about the technology as well as the actual managed service wrap itself. Okay, it's not just a way to reducing costs. I think that's a theme that everybody has touched on in their presentations. The world has changed. Real-time charging has to be a given these days. That particular area of the market is not mature. But when you're talking about data and digital services, it's got to be an integrated part of the management life cycle, especially when it comes to bidding, customer management. One of the other areas as well, a converged view in terms of being able to manage these whole plethora of services and segments, those kind of things, are absolutely key. That's the way to unlocking customer experience. Single view is a term that's been in the marketplace for a long, long time, and from that perspective, it's an absolute given. It has to be in this world of digital services. When looking at managed service BSS, again, make sure that the technology that actually drives the service is future-proofed. It does what you want it to do today, but it's also going to support you in your roadmap and also in the future as well. That's where innovation really starts to come to the fore. Business analytics that surrounds the managed service, again, it needs to be fully integrated. It's great for assuring the services and helping you manage the relationship, in terms of vendor customer and actually having a real partnership. And again, helping to drive the governance. And again, I've touched on it a couple of times. It has to be treated like a partnership, and that's the one thing that we certainly, learn as a business and really try to sort of, drive it at the heart of what we do as a managed service provider. Focused on the bidding space and also helping to innovate the market and take it to the next level from a digital service perspective. And one of our guys here said he did believe I could do 10 minutes. I think I've done 10 minutes, and that's the end. So thanks very much. Cheers.